And sir, I've learned a lot. I'm one of the guys that on this side of the aisle, when my colleagues speak,
Wow. Ooh.
fight as hard as you can for what you believe. And if you want to call that partisanship, fine. I've been exuberant in my beliefs, and I've learned a lot through this process. Some of my comments have been referenced numerous times, and I know that I have not been as precise and allowed my comments to be mischaracterized, and I don't blame those people who've mischaracterized some of my comments. I take responsibility and learn to be more precise. And I talk to these issues and I talk to my values as much as I can. I travel around this country calling for more comedy, calling for us respecting, seeing the dignity of Republicans and Democrats and recognizing as much as I can. And I say it, patriotism is love of country, and you cannot love your country unless you love all your countrymen and women. The goodness and the decency of Republicans and Democrats in this country is self-evident. And we demonize each other in ways that I will be and continue to be an exemplar of trying to get our dialogue to rise to something different, to be a country that sees that we need each other, that there's no Democratic or Republican way to success, there's only an American way. And sir, you know, and I hope, and I've said this to you personally, and I think I've said enough publicly, that in the hardness with which I fight, I mean you no personal insult, but I did say before, and I say now, before Dr. Ford's charges came up, I say very sincerely that I think that the way this process was run was a sham. I used that word, sir. And it was because we were evaluating someone for the highest court in the land with seeing such a small part of his relevant work product. I didn't understand how so much of his writing, approximately 90% of his relevant work product, was not even being seen by this committee and controlled by a process that was so broken, so partisan. And then, sir, I violated the rules that you put forward in this committee, willfully and knowingly, and accepting the consequences of that. And I did so because the documents that were being withheld from the public, I felt the public had a right to know, and they weren't classified. There was no national security issues. And gosh, we disagreed on that, sir, and I locked horns with people across the aisle. And even after all that, I was grateful for the comedy. The gentleman I knocked horns with most said to me, you know what? I was taught to hate the sin, but love the sinner. I really love being on this committee. I love it. From living in Newark, New Jersey, this is where I wanted to be, sir. I wanted to be on a committee that dealt with issues of justice in this country, because I feel that when we swear an oath to liberty and justice for all, I don't think we're there yet as a country. And I have to say now, as I'm sitting here, that I deeply resent this idea that somehow, when Dr. Ford came forward, that this dealt with partisanship. This is shifted this debate in this committee and in this country from raw partisanship to something much deeper. I have such respect for the ranking member. And I was in the room when we discussed, literally hours after I was made aware that the letter existed, about what her motivations were. It was a private room, and forgive me for speaking out of turn if the ranking member believes I am, but her entire sense of decency and honor had nothing to do with politics. Politics was not mentioned. Her entire concerns were about the dignity and the humanity and the respect for Dr. Ford. The conversation we had was about the best way to handle the information that was just presented to all of us. I've now been in numerous caucus meetings where politics has not been discussed, where what has been done was some of the most eloquent speeches I've heard in our caucus meetings from my colleagues about issues of sexual assault, issues of rape. I've heard colleagues read letters that had been written, not by a Democrat or Republicans, but by Americans who are concerned about this issue. This is not a partisan moment for our country. Back in the early 1990s, I was a student during the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas, during those hearings. And I think there's people on both sides of the aisle that agree that that was dealt with wrong, that the process then did not merit the dignity and decency of the folks involved or of the issue of sexual harassment. But yet that involved multiple hearings. That involved multiple witnesses. That involved the FBI investigation. And yet we still criticize that process. But now we're here today, and we have fallen even far short of what I believed was an inadequate process. Sir, this is not about partisanship. And a lot of folks are trying to make this about whether she was flying to California or not, whether the letter was authorized or released or not, whether the process served her or not. That seems to be stripping away the heroism of Ms. Ford, of Dr. Ford, to come before this committee willingly, even under circumstances that she said herself were not her wishes. She asked for an FBI investigation. She asked for more witnesses. She wasn't given what she asked for, and she still came here and sat before this committee. And what did she say, sir? When someone has the courage to speak to one of the most powerful bodies in the land, what did she say? She shared a raw and visceral and credible, a profoundly powerful testimony with this committee and the world, and she was believable. I believe her. She told us of her indelible memory, using words like seared into her memory, speaking to brain chemistry in a way. She spoke of uproarious laughter, of Brett Kavanaugh and Mark Judge being pinned to a bed, being hand over the mouth, fearing for her life, that she was terrified of being raped or accidentally killed. When asked by this committee what level of certainty, this wasn't, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure. She said, I am 100% certain that it was Judge Kavanaugh, consistent with other folks who experience sexual violence. It was seared into her memory. She knows 100%. And that's credible because she knew him. She had interacted with him socially before he attacked her. She didn't need to pick him out of a lineup of teenagers and some random attack. She knew him. Dr. Ford's credible testimony does not stand on its own. It is bolstered by significant corroboration. In 2012, 2013, 2014, 2016, she spoke of it. She told it to 5 people. Long before Judge Kavanaugh was nominated to the Supreme Court, she told multiple people that she had been sexually assaulted as a teenager. In some instances, she identified him specifically by name. In others, she described her attacker as a federal judge. Each of these individuals have provided this committee with their sworn statements attesting to these facts. We could have called those individuals to testify that this was not what I've heard, part of a coordinated attack, something to do with the Clintons and all the other allegations. This is somebody in the early years had talked about Brett Kavanaugh assaulting her. This is not some kind of political attack. This is consistent not only with her statements that have been corroborated, it's consistent what we know about other people who have undergone sexual attacks. And beyond the corroboration of outside witnesses, Dr. Ford's account is also corroborated by independent facts. Facts, not opinions. The fact that Dr. Ford identified Mark Judge and P.J. Smith as others who were friends of Kavanaugh and present at the gathering is corroborated. It's also corroborated in Judge Kavanaugh's own calendar, as we've seen. Judge Kavanaugh documented a gathering on July 1st, 1982 that included Mark Judge, P.J. Smith, and a reference to alcohol. Dr. Ford testified that shortly after the assault, around 6 to 8 weeks later, in her estimation, she ran into Mark Judge at a local grocery store, and that he seemed very uncomfortable to see her. In his book, Wasted, Tales of a Gen X Drunk, Mark Judge described working at a local grocery store in the summer of 1982. It's all consistent. The circumstances surrounding her coming forward to this committee also support her. First, she made contact with elected representatives before Judge Kavanaugh was even nominated. This isn't some political hit job. Before he was even nominated, she came forward with this testimony. Second, she submitted to a lengthy, intrusive, emotional, as she said, polygraph record. We didn't call for the polygraph tester to sit before her so we could question them. The report concluded that she was truthful and now a part of the committee's record. Third, number three, she reportedly called for an FBI investigation into her claims, fully understanding that a false statement to the FBI could subject her to criminal penalties. We all know what it means when you get a call from a committee staffer, or partisan in this case, versus when you get a call from the FBI, where lying to them is a felony. That is a powerful difference between a committee investigation and an FBI agent interviewing people, chasing after facts, pulling on the loose threads that have been evident in Judge Kavanaugh's record. And fourth, she came forward publicly despite knowing she would face harsh public scrutiny, threats, relentless invasions of privacy, that her life would be forever altered. We've heard a lot about the effect on Judge Kavanaugh, which is real and not exaggerated, but the effect on her as well, and what she had to submit to by coming forward and making that courageous testimony. Now, Judge Kavanaugh's testimony, regardless of these allegations, it stands in sharp contrast to Dr. Ford's testimony. First, Judge Kavanaugh has everything to lose should these allegations be fully investigated and proven true. Everything to lose. And that's why I don't think he wants a full investigation. Second, he has given numerous opportunities, time and time again, to call for an FBI investigation, call for an independent investigation to clear his name. But he's refused to do so. If I was in the balance and was being accused of things that I knew were lies, I would be demanding every bit of evidentiary investigation possible. Not just the FBI, I'd be calling for independent investigators. I'd be calling on every loose thread, but he hasn't. He's refused to call for this committee to hear even live testimony from witnesses that could corroborate his story or the doctor's. Third, his testimony and claims regarding his drinking habits and behavior in high school and college beyond have been contradicted by so many people. His statements have just proven to be not true. Judge Kavanaugh's freshman college roommate, James Roach, has said that he was frequently incoherently drunk and that he became aggressive and belligerent when he was drunk. But that's not the only one that said this. Liz Swisher, Judge Kavanaugh's friend from Yale College, to whom he referred to numerous times, said it's not credible for Judge Kavanaugh to say that he has no memory lapses in the nights that he drank to excess. And I'll tell you this, Mr. Chairman, Lynn Brooks, who said she did not want to come forward, another friend from Yale, and showing that this is not partisan, she is a Republican, Mr. Chairman. She did not want to come forward, but last night, after listening to his testimony, was so offended by his lies that this is what his friend from Yale, a registered Republican, said. There is no doubt in my mind that while at Yale, he was a big partier, often drank to excess, and there had to be a number of nights he does not remember. In fact, I was witness to the night he got tapped into his fraternity and was stumbling drunk, and he was in a ridiculous saying really dumb things, and I can almost guarantee that there is no way that he remembers that night. This is a registered Republican who did not want to come forward until he heard the lies of Judge Kavanaugh. Brooks said last night in an interview that there were multiple emails and texts circling amongst her classmates about how Kavanaugh was, quote, lying to the Senate Judiciary Committee in his testimony. That's from a Republican who did not want to come forward until she witnessed those lies. Judge Kavanaugh's testimony yesterday also mischaracterizes what 3 other people Dr. Ford indicated were present last night. He told us, as his exonerating evidence, kept mentioning 3 names over and over again. Judge Kavanaugh repeatedly said that 4 people who knew Dr. Ford, who Dr. Ford said were present at the gathering where she was sexually assaulted, said it didn't happen. That's just patently untrue. Mark Judge said, I have no memory of this alleged incident. This is not, it did not happen. P.J. Smith said, he has no knowledge of these allegations. That is not, it did not happen. Leland Kaiser has said through her attorney she has no recollection of being at a party or gathering where Kavanaugh was present. That is not, it did not happen. In fact, Leland Kaiser has said she believes Dr. Ford. The only person who has denied the event has taken place, who said it did not happen, is Judge Kavanaugh. And so now this is the real point, sir.
Can you, you've gone...
I would like to finish, sir.
You've gone...
I understand that, but may I finish my statement?
Okay. I want to ask you a question. You've gone 17 minutes. I got 3 other people who'd like to speak.
Sir, I understand that. I'm going to be closing my comments soon, and I'd like to continue.
Are you willing to let 3 other people speak?
Sir, I want to finish my comments, and you can let whoever speaks speak, sir. That's you're the chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
he
can take as much of my time as he wishes.
So this nation now is watching, not in a partisan way. We just saw one Republican so offended because she knows Kavanaugh. This is not Democrats and Republicans watching. This is Americans watching right now to see what this body will do. This isn't about politics or partisanship. I will forever remember what Dr. Ford said when she came before us. She said she was performing her civic duty. She wasn't trying to destroy a man. She was a courageous, heroic woman telling her truth of sexual assault and sexual harassment. This is what was done to me, she said. Many of my colleagues yesterday said they found Dr. Ford credible. But to confirm Judge Kavanaugh, you would have to say not only that you don't believe her, Dr. Ford, but that you are so certain this didn't happen that you're willing to force a vote now without any further investigation. At best, this means you think somehow she was confused, that she doesn't really know what happened to her. Even though yesterday she told us that she remembers Brett Kavanaugh covering her mouth, seared into her memory, expressing fear at the time that he might accidentally kill her. She told us details from 2012, 13, 16, and 17, told to her therapist, to her husband. And so this is where we are in the United States of America right now. This is not a partisan moment. This is a moral moment in our nation. We do not have to have this vote today. We can correct from the mistakes of the past in this nation. There are millions of people, men and women, survivors of sexual assault, who are watching this body of powerful people, and what will happen? This toxic culture, this pernicious patriarchy in this country has to stop. It's real in this country, and people are suffering, and they're watching this body right now. Children abused, watching what powerful people in religious institutions, how they sweep it aside, deny, attack. People in corporations or news media outlets who were abused and harassed for years. And their testimony, their truth was swept aside, belittled. They were attacked, they were vilified, they were followed by investigators. Millions are watching this body and how we act. Do we rush to a vote? Will we brush aside a credible witness's testimony? Will we belittle and attack credible testimony? Will we ignore credible testimony? Will we listen? Will we believe? In the United States of America right now, there are dark corners of our culture. The Center for Disease Control reports 1 out of every 3 American women, 1 out of 3 American women will experience some form of sexual violence. 1 out of 6 men. 60% of them go unreported. And there are those right now watching this group of powerful people. How will we deal with a privileged man? A seat on the Supreme Court is not an entitlement. Just because you went to Yale Law School or were the captain of your basketball team, the Supreme Court is not an entitlement. And Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you this is not a court of law. We're not saying that this man is guilty of what he said. The question is do we know enough now to delay this? Or are we going to rush to put someone on the Supreme Court with this cloud hanging over them? I cannot stomach that we are going to move forward, that we are going to say to women across this country, that say to men across this country.
I think that question.
And I'm going to finish.
I think that question you just asked is a good place to stop.
Sir, I will stop with this. I will stop with this with respect for this committee and respect for you. I cannot sit here. I cannot participate in what I know history is going to look back as a dark moment again, in the same way we look back at the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas trials. I cannot participate in that. I conclude my remarks, sir. We should not brush aside her comments. We should not belittle her testimony. We should listen to her. We should listen to women. And we should thoroughly investigate this before moving forward. To do any other thing is to diminish the truth, diminish the issue of sexual harassment in this country, and to again relegate ourselves to what I believe is a dark, dark element of our society. With that, sir, I will leave.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my judgment, there were no winners in this room yesterday. None. All I saw were 2 people, 2 human beings in pain. All of us, in my opinion, including Dr. Kavanaugh, or Dr. Ford rather, and Judge Kavanaugh, have a blinkered perspective. Whatever happened, happened 40 years ago. And that's just a fact. I don't know what happened to Dr. Ford. I don't know if we'll ever know what happened to Dr. Ford. I do believe that something very, very, very bad happened to Dr. Ford, and I am very sorry. But I do not believe that Judge Brett Kavanaugh was involved. And that's why I will support his nomination. Now let me talk about something that I'm a little more certain of. And I will be brief, Mr. Chairman. This has been, as someone put it in an article this morning, a grotesque carnival. In my opinion, this has been an intergalactic freak show. As far as I'm concerned, Congress has hit rock bottom and started to dig. And all of this could have been avoided. Every bit of it. The other thing I'm certain of is that these cynical games, this character assassination, has damaged Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh and their families irreparably. And it could have been avoided. Now, Senator Feinstein talked about this earlier, and she's right. How we treat women in America does matter. This is no country for creepy old men or young men or middle-aged men. But this is no country at all, in my opinion, at least not the kind of country I want to live in, without due process. Both the accuser and the accused are entitled to respect and fairness, and yes, to due process. To the person who leaked Dr. Ford's letter, to the person who breached Dr. Ford's anonymity, and to the person who did not tell her she could have avoided this by testifying privately in her home in California. You know who you are. You should bow your head in shame, in my opinion, and you should hide your head in a bag every day for the rest of your natural life. And you also ought to read something. I don't know if you believe in God or if you read the Bible, but there's wisdom in a passage, whether you read the Bible or believe in God or not. And I'd refer you to Matthew 16:26. For what is a person profited? For what is a person profited if he gains the whole world and he loses his soul? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
These till they follow the gavel.